Hello everyone. In the previous video, we demonstrated how to exactly decompose any n-qubit unitary into a composition of single-qubit unitaries and CNOT gates. In this video, we will explore how to extend this result when, instead of having access to any single-qubit unitary, we restrict our access to a finite single-qubit unitary gate set. Since we are working with a discrete gate set, we clearly cannot implement an arbitrary unitary operation because the unitary group is continuous. Consequently, we are instead interested in approximating these gates to arbitrary accuracy. This means that we are interested in finding some approximation v to the ideal unitary u such that the operator distance between them is bounded above by epsilon for some threshold epsilon greater than 0. Furthermore, this means that if we chain together n approximations vj to uj up to accuracy epsilon j, the total error of this approximation is bounded above by the sum of all the individual epsilons. The proof of this follows from a telescoping sum argument, where we essentially consider intermediate terms where some of the unitaries are given by the ideal values, while the others are given by their approximations. Okay. So we need to be able to approximate any gate to arbitrary accuracy. But what kind of so-called universal gate set can we use to accomplish this? Well, one of the standard universal gate sets is the Clifford plus T gate set. The Clifford group is a set of all unitaries that permute Pauli operators to other Paulis under conjugation, up to a change in sign. The group is generated by the H, S, and CNOT gates, meaning it includes many of the gates that we've already talked about, like the Pauli gates, for example, which can be formed by composing H and S gates. Note that, of course, because this is a group, there is closure under multiplication, meaning that Clifford operators can only multiply to form other Cliffords, of which there are only finitely many for each dimension. After all, there are only so many permutations of Pauli matrices. Consequently, to get operators outside of this group, we need a non-Clifford operator. This is exactly where the T gate comes into play. Since t squared equals s, we have that the universal gate set here is simply given by H, T, and C naught. Since we know from the previous video that C naughts and arbitrary single-qubit unitaries are all we need for universal quantum computation, we consider how H and T alone give us universality in the single-qubit case. Consider the operators T and HTH. From the Bloch sphere perspective, T is a pi/4 rotation about the z-axis, while HTH is the same rotation about the x-axis. If we compose these operators, we have that this amounts to the following rotation. In particular, this is a rotation about the vector, which is in the direction of cosine pi over 8, sine pi over 8, cosine pi over 8, by angle theta, which is given by 2 times the arc cosine of cosine squared of pi over 8, which can be shown to be an irrational multiple of 2 pi. Consequently, this means that by simply applying this rotation over and over, we can get arbitrarily close to any rotation about n by angle alpha. To see why this is, let delta be the desired accuracy for the angle, and let big N be an integer larger than 2 pi over delta. We then define the angle theta k as the kth multiple of theta modulo 2 pi. By pigeonhole principle, we have that if we divide the unit circle into big N bins, where let's say the lower angle side is included while the higher angle side is excluded, then there exist distinct m and n between 0 and big N such that theta m and theta little n are contained in the same bin, meaning that their distance is less than 2 pi over n, which is of course less than delta. Assuming theta n is greater than theta m without loss of generality, we have that theta n minus m differs from 0 by at most delta. If we then rotate by theta n minus m repeatedly until we complete a full revolution about the circle, we see that we end up with this delta net for the circle, meaning that any point on the circle is within distance at most delta of at least one point on the net. Consequently, any rotation angle alpha can be approximated to accuracy delta. By the continuity of the exponential map, this implies that since the set given by m theta for all m in the set of integers is dense in S1, which we mean here to essentially be the interval from 0 to 2 pi, the corresponding rotations must be dense in the codomain of S1, which is simply the group of all rotations about n. Consequently, we can approximate any rotation about n by angle alpha to arbitrary accuracy in the operator norm. For reasons that will soon become clear, we will choose our threshold to be epsilon over 3. If we now conjugate the rotation around n by Hadamard matrices, we get a rotation about m hat, which is the unit vector in the direction of cosine pi over 8 minus sine pi over 8 cosine pi over 8. Because the operator norm is invariant under left and right unitary multiplication, we have that this directly implies that we can also approximate rotation by angle alpha about m hat to accuracy epsilon over 3. Using the generalized Euler decomposition, we have that any unitary in SU2 can be expressed as follows. By approximating each of these rotations individually to accuracy epsilon over 3, we can then compose them to approximate the entire unitary to accuracy epsilon. Okay, so we know that the set of gates generated by the standard universal gate set is dense in SU2. But how long of a sequence of gates from the universal gate set do we need to approximate a unitary to epsilon accuracy? Well, as it turns out, the answer is surprisingly few, at least asymptotically. In particular, the Solovay-Kitaev Theorem tells us that for such a gate set, we only require a sequence of gates tilde u from the generating set of length L equal to O of log to the c of 1 over epsilon to get that the operator distance of tilde u and u is bounded above by epsilon, where c is just taken to be some constant. This means that if we have a circuit with m arbitrary single-qubit unitary gates, we only need O of m times log to the c of m over epsilon gates to approximate this to epsilon accuracy. Note that this is because we need to estimate each of the m gates to epsilon over m accuracy. Consequently, we only accumulate a polylogarithmic overhead in the number of gates. It should be noted that this theorem actually holds more generally for any SUD. Note that in the original formulation, we assume that all the inverses of every gate in the gate set are also contained in the gate set. It is still possible to achieve polylog scaling even without this assumption, though the best known C is somewhat larger, and in fact scales with D. Though if we set D to be a constant like 2, this just means that C is a larger constant. In any case, you're probably wondering what this constant C is in general. Well, in the original paper, C was taken to be approximately 3.97. Without inverses, this changes to around 8.62. Focusing back on the case where we have inverses, recent papers have shown C to be as low as 1.44042, with some specific gate sets being shown to even achieve C equals 1, which is the theoretical lower bound. Nevertheless, for ease of explanation and conceptual understanding, I will focus on the original result. Okay, so how do we prove this theorem? Well, if you want the full proof, you'll have to read the original paper, but I'll give a sketch of the proof here. The idea is that we can construct such an approximation through a recursive procedure. Suppose we have an approximation un-1 in SU2 such that it deviates an operator distance from u by at most epsilon n-1. We have that this approximation differs from the ideal unitary by a multiplicative factor delta, which is equal to u times un-1 dagger. Consequently, if we can approximate delta, we can multiply it by un-1 to get closer to u. Note here that because un-1 is close to u, we have that delta therefore only differs from identity by epsilon n-1. In order to approximate delta, we essentially use the fact that the group commutators of operators close to identity can actually be estimated relatively easily. For two operators, A and B, we define their group commutator as the following multiplicative commutator operation, as opposed to the additive ring one we typically use in quantum mechanics. It can be shown that if we have operators VW in SU2 that are distance delta 1 from the identity, and we have approximations tilde V tilde W that differ from their respective ideal counterparts by delta 2, then the group commutators of VW differ from that of their approximate counterparts by O of delta 1 delta 2. Proving this simply requires applying the BCH formula for exponentials of operators, after which we can then ignore the higher order terms, then we can Taylor expand the exponential, and finally we can compute the operator distance. This means that if we decompose delta into a group commutator, choosing VW to be close to identity, we can recursively approximate Vn-1 and Wn-1 to epsilon n-1 accuracy. Because delta minus I has operator norm bounded by epsilon n-1, we can choose V and W that differ from identity by a most c square root of epsilon n-1 for some constant c. We can show this by using the expression for the group commutator we previously obtained from the BCH formula. As you can see, to first order in the exponent, we have that this is simply the commutator of A and B. We of course have that A and B are elements of the SU2 Lie algebra. Recall that a Lie algebra is simply a vector space that is also equipped with a vector product operation known as the Lie bracket that satisfies a variety of different conditions. Here, the SU2 Lie algebra is simply a real vector space over basis operators ix over 2, iy over 2, and iz over 2, where x by z are the polys that we're familiar with. We can then use the fact that the SU2 Lie algebra is isomorphic to R3 equipped with the cross product via the vector we use in the exponential. This means that the commutator of two elements of the SU2 Lie algebra is simply the element whose vector corresponds to A cross B. This means that we simply need to find any A and B whose cross product yields C. Choosing AB to be orthogonal and have the same norm, we have that since the norm of C is on the order of epsilon n-1, we have that the norms of A and B are both on the order of the square root of epsilon n-1, giving us the deviation cited previously. Setting delta 1 to be c times the square root of epsilon n-1 and delta 2 to be epsilon n-1, we then have that the error of the estimate for the group commutator, and therefore the error in the approximation of un, which is of course given by tilde v, tilde w, tilde v dagger, tilde w dagger, un-1, scales as epsilon n equal to c times epsilon n-1 to the 3/2. Consequently, so long as we choose our original error epsilon 0 sufficiently small enough, this error will decay to 0 super exponentially. From the recurrence relation, we have that epsilon n scales as epsilon 0 to the 3/2 to the n, up to some additional factors. Taking logarithms and negating, we find that for epsilon n to be epsilon, we choose n on the order of log 3/2 of log of 1 over epsilon. Now that we know the recursion depth, we now consider the length of the approximation at each depth. We choose our starting length L0 for epsilon 0, such that the gate strings from the generating set form an epsilon 0 net for SU2. From there, we have that the recursion relation composes 5 unitaries of 1 depth less, meaning that Ln scales at most as L0 times 5 to the n. Substituting n from before into here, we find that the length of the sequence is at most O of log to the c of 1 over epsilon, where c is equal to log base 3/2 of 5, which is approximately 3.97. One of the main benefits of this theorem is that because its proof is constructive, it directly gives us an algorithm for finding these gates. In particular, we can simply combine the recursive procedure detailed in the proof to arrive at the Solovay-Kitaev algorithm. This is given by the following protocol. At level n, we recursively define an approximation of level n-1. We then decompose u into v and w via the group commutator. We then recursively solve for v and w at level n-1. Finally, we compose vn-1, wn-1, v dagger n-1, w dagger n-1 with the n-1 level approximation to obtain the level n result. We can then repeat this procedure as desired to get a circuit of epsilon accuracy using O of log to the c of 1 over epsilon gates. To see how this algorithm works in practice, let's consider how the Solovay-Kitaev algorithm decomposes a z rotation by 2 pi over 3 radians, which is given by the following diagonal unitary, using only ht and t dagger gates. Note that, of course, we technically don't need t dagger as a separate gate in our gate set, since t dagger is just t to the 7th, but we will include it to make things simpler, since the Solovay-Kitaev theorem assumes the gate set contains all the inverses of its gates. If we run this algorithm for a depth 0, we simply take the closest approximation from the starting epsilon net, which just gives us 3 t gates, equivalent to a z rotation by 3 pi over 4 radians. If we run Solovay-Kitaev with one level of depth, we get a much longer sequence of gates, too long in fact to show on screen all at once. Altogether, this particular sequence consists of 37 gates. While it's true that the length of the sequence has grown significantly at just one level of depth, we will also see shortly how the error also decreases relatively quickly in tandem. At 2 levels of depth, the gate sequence becomes even longer, giving us a decomposition with 193 gates. To get a better picture of how closely these decompositions are approximating the desired rotation, let's see what the actual approximated unitaries look like, and how the operator distance changes as we increase the number of levels of recursion. I'll write the decimal expansion of the unitary so we can compare digit by digit. By just relying on the covering, we can see that the approximation returned is still quite far from the desired unitary. However, with a single level of recursion, we can see that the matrix is already starting to look significantly closer to what we want, with the error dropping from 0.18 to around 0.06. As we increase the depth, we can see that the error continues to drop off, eventually falling by around an order of magnitude with each successive depth. Nevertheless, the number of gates does also increase rapidly, with the 5th level requiring almost 20,000 gates. Nevertheless, in practice, there are a variety of techniques we can use to lower this number and avoid circuit bloat. Furthermore, given how quickly the error drops off with recursion depth, we don't need to run the algorithm for too long a time to sufficiently approximate a given unitary for practical purposes. As we can see, the Solovay-Kitaev theorem gives us an efficient recipe for approximating any single-qubit unitary to arbitrary accuracy. From the previous video, we have that with access to any single-qubit unitary and C0 gates, we can reconstruct any n-qubit unitary. Consequently, we can use the result of the SK theorem to approximate any n-qubit unitary we so wish. Given the success we had in efficiently constructing single-qubit unitaries, can we extend this to multi-qubit unitaries as well? While we can use the Givens rotation construction from the last lecture to approximate any unitary, we also saw that in the worst case, the particular construction we used required exponentially many gates in terms of the number of qubits. As it turns out, this is a fundamental limitation that cannot be overcome, as approximating arbitrary unitaries is hard. This can be seen through various counting arguments, where it can be shown that to construct an epsilon net on SU 2 to the n, we require an exponential number of gates in terms of n. Nevertheless, as long as our gates have some well-behaved structure to them, we can typically approximate them quite efficiently with the tools that we have. Altogether, we saw how the Solovay-Kitaev theorem completes our journey to figure out how to estimate any arbitrary unitary with a given gate set. Having finished this chapter, we will begin our final collection of chapters in this lecture series dedicated entirely to different quantum algorithms. In particular, we will begin by discussing quantum advantage for unstructured problems via Grover's algorithm. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.